Starfield is an upcoming single-player action RPG from Bethesda, and their first new IP in over 25 years. Starfield will put you into the world of the Settled Systems, a location approximately 50 light years away from our Earth. If you've ever wanted to live out your own space explorer fantasy, then Starfield is likely the perfect game for you. I've researched numerous sources and watched all the Starfield content that I could find to put together this video for you. We'll answer questions such as what will the game's story and characters be like? How much of the game's universe can we explore? How in-depth is Starfield's character and ship customization? And what will combat look like in-game? All these questions and more will be answered in this video. So prepare to launch as we take a tour of the Settled Systems and we discuss all you need to know about Starfield. Starfield is set for release on September 6th for Xbox Series S and X and PC, and it will be releasing on day 1 for Game Pass. Starfield will take place in the year 2330, approximately 20 years after a bloody colonial conflict between the game's two largest factions, the United Colonies and the Free Star Collective, who fought in what came to be known as the Colony War. When the game begins, these two factions seemingly maintain a peaceful relationship. However, it is said that that peace is very uneasy. You will play as a space miner who joins a group known as Constellation, who are described as the last group of true space explorers, and a group that most aren't even aware exist anymore. Constellation are hunting for what are known as old Earth artifacts, which have been scattered throughout the galaxy. You will be tasked with helping search for and find these artifacts that are supposedly the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. The discovery of these mysterious artifacts will provide you with visions, and the leader of Constellation actually mentioned the artifact reaching out and speaking with your character. Howard has said that the game's main story quest will last between 30 and 40 hours, with additional side missions and content still remaining outside of that as well. According to Howard, that would make the game's main story content approximately 20% larger than Skyrim or Fallout 4. With a story that big and a world so wide open, it's going to be hard not to lose yourself in the Starfield universe. But that's exactly what Bethesda is hoping to make happen. Exploration and immersion will be a massive part of Starfield, both in space and on the ground. With a main story of around 30 to 40 hours, there will be a huge variety of places to visit, characters to interact with, and quests to get lost in. Starfield is looking to immerse you into the world of the Settled Systems and allow you to live out your space explorer dreams, to do what you want to do and be who you want to be, even if that's bringing your goldfish to the beach. Todd Howard has said that Starfield will have two of those classic Bethesda step-out moments throughout the game. One of these will be a handcrafted moment at the beginning of the game. Think of other memorable moments from previous Bethesda games like leaving the vault in Fallout or awakening for the first time in Skyrim.
Hey, you're finally awake.
Starfield and the Settled Systems will feature around 100 star systems and 1,000 different planets and moons that can be visited and explored. Well, Todd Howard has confirmed how many of those planets will actually contain life in Starfield, with him saying that about 10% of the planets in Starfield will have life, which mimics the Goldilocks zone or habitable zones for planets, which are planets within that range of distance with the right temperatures for water to remain liquid and sustain life. So these planets are not too hot, they're not too cold, and they are just right for liquid water. This would mean that around 100 planets out of the 1,000 planets that are in Starfield would contain life, that being plants and different wildlife. Starfield will look to accomplish this using procedural generation, similar to what is used in No Man's Sky, but more on that later. Because of the scale of this game, planetary exploration will be a make or break component for Starfield. While you will be able to manually fly your spaceship at times, you won't be able to just fly down from space and land on a planet or take off straight from that planet, as jumping from system to system or planet to planet will be a bit more structured than just flying down and landing, with Todd Howard saying, quote, "We decided early on in the project that the on-surface is one reality and when in space is another reality." He said that the team wanted to ensure that their focus was on making both experiences the best that they could be, so they decided that the in-between was just not an area that they would focus their resources on. So when taking off from or landing on a planet or moon, you will see a cinematic of your ship doing so instead of manually doing that yourself. To explore the game's different systems and planets, you will open up your star map, select the system you want, and choose the subsequent planet or moon you would like to visit. Within the star map, you can view the number of planets and moons a system has, the number of outposts, or any other notable structures that you have discovered. You can then navigate the system and zoom in to see an overview of the location you'd like to visit, including what type of planet it is, the gravity of that planet, the temperature, atmosphere, magnetosphere, fauna and flora, water type, and the resources that a planet has. You'll also notice a survey percentage for the different systems, indicating the progress you have made in discovering new things in that system. And you'll be able to monitor your survey progress as you explore different planets. From the star map, you can also scan planets and view missions on those planets and moons as well. You will see what level each location is to know whether or not you are the appropriate level to take on that location, or if you want to decide to wait and come back when you're a higher level. He also discussed that once you survey these different planets and resources and you fully survey the planet, you can actually sell that data for credits, as it's very valuable in-game, adding another layer to Starfield's exciting economy system. When you're ready to land on a planet or moon, you just need to select your landing target and then initiate the landing. Or if you see an already known location, you can go ahead and fast travel to that location if you choose. If you're wanting to travel long distances that will require you to grav jump, then you'll need to plot out your path amongst the stars. Your ship's grav drive system works by folding space, allowing you to travel long distances to places that are light years away. The distance that you can travel will depend on your ship's grav drive. The stronger your grav drive, the further you can grav jump. So if you want to jump to the most distant ones, then you'll need to upgrade your ship and skills, which we'll discuss a little bit later. When grav jumping, you will see how many jumps it will take, your jump range, the distance in light years, and how much fuel the jump will consume. Some planets, like the planet Jemison, will have large capital cities like New Atlantis. When entering patrolled locations like New Atlantis, your ship will be scanned for contraband. We've seen a scan happen in the gameplay deep dive, however the consequences for this have not yet been seen if you have contraband on your ship. But I thought the ship scanning was a cool little detail. However, Howard has said that you will not be limited to these cities and can land and explore anywhere on the planets in a system, stating, quote, "You can land in New Atlantis, but you can also land and explore anywhere on the planet. And it's not just this planet, it's all the planets on the system, from barren, resource-heavy ice balls to Goldilocks planets with life." When exploring space on your ship, there will be a variety of things you can do and experience. You can hail the ships that cross your path in space, and you can engage with the passengers of those ships in conversation. You can attempt to trade with them, discuss various info, or you can just outright attack them. Some NPCs in space may even invite you onto their ship for different activities, such as a nice meal or even a fancy party. In space, who knows what all might come your way. There will also be different smuggling missions that you can engage in that will require you to haul illegal cargo without getting caught, and there will be legal cargo missions as well. And while doing so, you'll have to navigate through asteroid fields that are trying to smash your ship to bits. There will also be spaceports that you can visit. Here you can store ships as well as buy and sell them, and there are also ship technicians to repair your ship and allow you to customize it. And you'll also be able to find and hire new crew members for your ship at spaceports throughout the galaxy. Similar to spaceports, there are also star yards located throughout the galaxy. Here you can stop and chat with other NPCs and ship captains, as well as purchase ships here as well. Very early in the game's main questline, we will also be returning to our own Earth solar system. In Starfield lore, the Earth solar system is referred to as the Old Neighborhood. Lead quest designer Will Shin had this to say about returning back to the Old Sol system. You'll be sent there on a mission from Constellation to discover the mysteries of the artifacts, and you'll get in contact with the question of, what happened to Earth? But also, you'll go to Mars, and there's actually a settlement, one of the early settlements that humanity created after they left Earth. It's called Cydonia, and there's a whole city with its own problems and people to meet. And as we learned in the deep dive, Cydonia is actually part of the United Colonies faction, which we'll talk about here in a minute, and serves as their largest mining facility. While you'll be able to freely explore planets and their ecosystems, Starfield will also feature 4 main cities that will serve as hubs for the main questline of the game. We've already learned about Cydonia located on Mars, but let's discuss the other large cities we'll see and explore. The first city we'll discuss is New Atlantis, located on the planet Jemison in the Alpha Centauri system. New Atlantis is the capital of the United Colonies faction, one of the largest factions in the game. According to Bethesda, the United Colonies are, quote, the most powerful established military and political faction in the game. The people of New Atlantis value law, discipline, and the legacy of humanity, and they view themselves as the true children of Earth. New Atlantis is the largest of the 4 main cities in Starfield, and according to Howard, is actually the largest city area for a Bethesda game thus far. With him saying, quote, "New Atlantis is easily the biggest city in the game and the biggest city we've ever built. Kind of the capital here in the game, and it has all of the services you would expect." Bethesda has poured a lot of detail into the cities to help them feel real and believable. From the detailed buildings and art, to the people engaging in different activities throughout the cities, and even a colonial war memorial that we saw in New Atlantis. Another really crazy thing about New Atlantis is apparently it actually has its own subway system as well, which just adds to the awesome complexity and scale of this city. Bethesda wants the characters in these cities to feel as though they're just going about their everyday lives. One thing I noticed in the gameplay deep dive was that the scale of New Atlantis is just so very impressive. As you walk on the ground, you feel surrounded by high-rise buildings as you would a true large city, and when you're high up, you can truly appreciate its grand design. New Atlantis will be home to the Constellation headquarters and will provide you a location that you can repair and work on your ship. Design director Emil Pagliarulo described the city as a melting pot, where residents of the city come from every race, creed, and ethnicity. So expect this to be a location that you're going to visit frequently and get to know very well. Next, let's discuss Akila City, the capital of the Freestar Collective, which is located in the Cheyenne star system. Akila City and its residents pride themselves on freedom and individuality. And one interesting fact is that the city is surrounded by a wall to help protect its citizens from an alien threat on the planet known as the Ashta, which is a type of alien predator described as a cross between a wolf and a velociraptor. However, the Freestar Collective is less formally established and is, quote, "a loose confederation of 3 distinct star systems." Bethesda has described the Freestar Collective and Akila City as the true space western fantasy. As we saw in the deep dive, it has all the feel of Red Dead 2 if it was set in space. From a saloon known as the Stone Root Inn to the city's law enforcement, the Freestar Rangers. I mean, we even saw some gunslingers have a good old-fashioned duel. It doesn't really get much more western than that. The final city we know about is the pleasure city known as Neon, located in the Voli star system. Neon falls within Freestar space, and the city is very unique. It's located on an aquatic planet and originally served the purpose of being a fishing vessel, owned and operated by the Xenofresh Corporation. However, it's been transformed over time into the bright and flashy city that we see today. The reason for the transformation is that the Xenofresh Corp discovered a type of fish caught on the planet that has psychotropic properties. So instead of fishing, they decided to make even more money by producing and selling the drug known as Aurora. And Neon is the only city where the drug is legal. Now, based on the ESRB description for the game, the Aurora drug will feature prominently throughout the game, and there will also be an entire section of the game that revolves around breaking into a drug manufacturing facility, which will likely be based on Neon. From the gameplay deep dive, we've seen alien dance clubs, shady back alley locations, and crime around every corner. So Neon definitely sounds like the place where the shady business of the game will go down. We have also seen some other locations throughout different gameplay footage reveals. One of those is the moon called Crete, which in the first gameplay showcase we saw our character have a run-in at a Crete research lab with some pirates. In the deep dive, we also saw another look at a location known as Red Mile, located in the Parima star system. And we saw a look at the Key, the Crimson Fleet headquarters located in the Kirk system. As I mentioned previously, Starfield will implement procedural generation for different planets and landscapes throughout the game. And Todd Howard has addressed this some, stating that this technique has been used on Bethesda games for a while, even for Skyrim, with him stating, quote, "We do a lot of procedural generation, but I would keep in mind that we've always done that, and it's a big part of Skyrim in terms of quests and some other things we do. We generate landscapes using procedural generation systems, and so we've always kind of worked on it. However, it seems clear that Starfield will likely take the use of procedural generation to the next level, especially to help fill in those 1,000 planets the game will supposedly have." The game's lead technical director also discussed the procedural generation in the game, explaining that Starfield generates the planet as procedural content as you approach, putting together blocks of terrain, then places interesting handcrafted locations, creatures, and plants for you to find and interact with. Meaning that if 2 people visit the same planet, they can have very different gameplay experiences, which is something I think can really increase the replayability of the game. Because Bethesda has entire populations to fill on these planets, they are using new technology to help them take entire locations they built and place them on the planets. This also takes the random encounters that you get in a Bethesda game to an entirely new level. as you can experience random encounters nearly anywhere, and it now involves groups of people instead of just one individual character. Will Shin described this random encounter system by saying, quote, "Say maybe you're going to an outpost and you actually discover there's a whole group of people there with a particular problem. Whereas before, it might have just been a person coming up to you along the road. Now it's an actual whole location that can be put there. And maybe there they have a problem like, one of our members was kidnapped. They've been kidnapped by some pirates. We think they're over there. We are actually placed in a whole other location with that person in it and enemies around it. So, it is a dynamically placed settlement that is taking you to a dynamically placed dungeon as you're walking through the planet." So here's to hoping that Bethesda have been perfecting that technique and the improvements in this technology to help make the game feel full of life and to help improve that immersion. I feel like the dynamically placed settlement and dynamically placed dungeon elements could really take Starfield to the next level. I'm sure that we're all very used to having random people come up to us in the Fallout series or the Elder Scrolls series and have some type of problem. Well, Starfield is saying that they're going to take this to the next level with not just one person coming up to you, but an entire group of people having an issue in the random encounter system. I just think that makes it sound way more incredible. Bethesda has placed a real focus on making Starfield's universe feel real and immersing you in the game. From the many planets that you're going to visit to the random encounter system, even down to the culture of different groups of people. With Todd Howard describing the team focusing down to even the smallest cultural details, even considering things like what do they people eat, what toys do their children play with, what type of bedtime stories might they tell, what would their art be, what about their history as well as their entertainment. He discussed that they were looking at the game as an entire universe and not just a game by itself. We like to be able to touch everything. Those moments make the whole thing believable. Being able to watch the sun set and the nighttime come and just sit there and watch the world go by. Seems like it's not gameplay, but it's vital to how you feel through the rest of it. And when he says touch everything in Starfield, it truly feels like they mean it. From the deep dive, we were able to see that you can pick up various items, move them, and store seemingly as many as you want. Even if you want 100 sandwiches, then you can go right ahead and collect 100 sandwiches. To help push this immersion, Starfield will use a next-generation lighting model to help light the world based on the type of star that's in the system and the makeup of the planet's atmosphere. Bethesda have said they wanted the lighting in Starfield to feel cinematic. The landscapes and biomes that appear on land are also realistically placed based on their distance from that system's sun. From the gameplay deep dive, we have seen some of the examples of the different types of biomes that are in the game, such as mountains, swamps, frozen plains, coniferous forests, and savannas. When designing these planets and placing biomes, Bethesda is looking at things like temperature and radiation when deciding where these biomes will be placed. And Todd described that you can actually get certain ailments if you're not well prepared or protected to go on that planet. From the deep dive, we actually saw some of those ailments, which included things like joint pain, soreness, and a cough. We have also seen that we will get to discover and interact with a huge variety of wildlife in Starfield. There will be numerous fauna and flora to see, scan, to fight, and to harvest. Scanning these creatures will provide you with valuable information, such as temperament, the resource they provide, the biomes they roam, their health, and their abilities. You'll also want to pay attention to their status, as it appears they can be either healthy or diseased, which could result in you getting an infection or the resource not being useful from that creature. So far, I've loved the variety and uniqueness of the creatures what we have seen. From small insect-like creatures to giant dinosaur-looking ones, I've been very impressed. Bethesda have worked to make the creatures fit the biomes and environments they have been placed in as well, to try and make them feel as though they are native to that location. So as I've discussed, immersion is going to be a key for Bethesda in Starfield, and it sounds like we are just going to be absolutely immersed in the world of the settled systems, and I just cannot wait. One of the best parts of any epic action RPG like an Elder Scrolls or a Fallout is the ability to immerse yourself in that world. And part of what makes those games so immersive is the ability to create your own character and tell your character's story within that world. Todd Howard has described Starfield's character creator as the quote most flexible yet. He also discussed that the character creator will help elevate Starfield in the RPG genre. So let's discuss all the character creation options that we know about so far. Your character will begin with a few basic options, including something known as a biometric ID, as well as face and body customizations. There will also be more playstyle defining options known as backgrounds and traits, which have helped to provide a lot of insights into Starfield's gameplay and mechanics thus far. So let's start with the basics and then we'll discuss and dive into the more extensive aspects of character creation. The biometric ID provides you with a base model to design your character, with each model having a personnel record, and there will be 40 starting presets to choose from. You can customize your body shape and size, defining the body between 3 points of muscular, thin, and heavy. You can also adjust the body type, walk style, and your character's skin tone. Regarding face customization, we have seen that you can use a variety of elements to get the exact look that you want, even down to dermesthetic changes, scars, piercings, and even your teeth, which is more than I expected. And one nice thing about physical appearance customization is that it appears this can be later changed by visiting what is known as a genetics facility in-game. You'll also be able to begin the game with a background story for your character. The background that you choose, along with the traits that we'll discuss next, will have an impact on your gameplay experience. Backgrounds affect the way NPCs see and interact with your character throughout the world. Some NPCs and factions may appear friendly to you, while others may be apprehensive based on your background. I'll start by going over the list of backgrounds that we know more in-depth information about, then I'll list off the others that we have seen. And one thing I noticed from the first gameplay showcase to the more recent deep dive was that some of the background starting skills have been changed. As I go through the skills, I'm going to list off the skills that the background has, but we're actually going to discuss the skills a little bit more in depth in the gameplay and combat section of the video. First up is the chef with starting skills of gastronomy, dueling, and scavenging. Next up is the combat medic with skills of pistol certification, medicine, and wellness. We also saw the cyber runner with starting skills of stealth, security, and theft. We also saw the cyberneticist who has skills of medicine, security, and lasers. And we saw the diplomat, which has skills of persuasion, commerce, and wellness. And as we'll discuss a little bit more later, Starfield actually has what is known as a persuasion minigame, which happens throughout the dialogue and takes inspiration from the old Oblivion system. And we also got a look at a new background known as the Explorer, which has starting skills of lasers, astrodynamics, and surveying. So those are the backgrounds we got to see the starting skills of. Let's go through the other ones that we know so far. Those being the Beast Hunter, the Bouncer, and the Bounty Hunter, as well as the Gangster, Homesteader, and Industrialist, and finally the Long Hauler, Pilgrim, Professor, and the Ronin. Now traits are another interesting part of your character creation. Traits will provide your character with different advantages and disadvantages depending on what you select. You'll be able to choose 3 traits from a list of different traits, however they are completely optional whether or not you want them, and there are ways to remove them later on if you want. We've been able to learn some of the details about some of these traits, and there's others that we can kind of figure out based on the information we've been given. So let's go through the ones that we know about first, and then we'll go through the list of the others that we haven't really got a lot of details on so far. First up is the Freestar Collective Settler. Now this is what is known as a faction allegiance trait, and there are 3 of those in the game. Now the Freestar Collective Settler says that you likely grew up a member of the Freestar Collective, so you'll be able to provide access to special dialogue options and better rewards from some missions in Akila City, which is home of the Freestar Collective. Now if you choose a faction allegiance trait similar to religious traits that we're also going to discuss, this will block you from choosing another faction or religious trait. Now the other 2 faction allegiance traits are the Neon Street Rat and the United Colonies Native. So similar to the Freestar Collective, this would mean that you grew up on the streets of Neon or you grew up a member of the United Colonies. You would get access to special dialogue options, and you would have different things in those cities that you would be able to access compared to the other 2 cities in which you did not grow up in. One of the really cool new ones is the Hero Worshipped trait, which says that you've earned the attention of an annoying, adoring fan who will show up randomly and jabber at you incessantly. On the plus side, he'll join your ship's crew and give you gifts. Now, if you're familiar, this is a fun Easter egg that we saw in the deep dive where you can have your own adoring fan, which is a nod back to Oblivion. And remember, if you no longer want a trait, or an adoring fan in this case, you can always do something to remove them. I mean the trait. We also saw the Introvert trait, which talked about you needing your time alone. It provides you with more endurance when you're adventuring alone, but less when you're with other human companions. Now, Introvert actually has an opposite trait, which is Extrovert. And even though we didn't get to see the actual description of that, we can sort of just deduce that it's going to be the opposite of that Introvert trait. We also saw Kid Stuff, which has been slightly changed from the first gameplay showcase. It says that your parents are alive and well and you can visit them at their home, but you automatically send 2% of your credits home to them every week, which has been reduced from 10% in the first gameplay showcase. Some of the religious traits have also been changed from the first gameplay showcase, those being the Raised Enlightened and the Raised Universal, which now provide you with access to a special chest full of items in that religious group's place in New Atlantis. Now the most interesting one there is probably the Serpent's Embrace, which says that you grew up worshipping the Great Serpent, and grav jumping provides you with a temporary boost to health and endurance, but health and endurance are lowered if you don't continue jumping regularly, like in Addiction. So that one could be interesting, but it could also be kind of annoying if you sit there and have to jump over and over and over, but hey, to each their own. Spaced is another one that we saw that has your body being acclimated to space, giving you more health and endurance when in space, but decreased on the surface. And while we didn't actually see the description of it, terra firma is likely the opposite of spaced, giving you more health and endurance on the surface, but not as much in space. We also saw a really interesting one called Starter Home, which says that you own a small house on a peaceful little moon, but it comes with a 50,000 credit mortgage with the Gal Bank. So does this confirm that we're able to purchase homes in the game? I'm not totally sure. It'll be interesting to see what advantages having a home would be compared to not having one. Maybe you're just able to store more things there. I also wonder if you'll be able to have the option to try and avoid paying the debt, and if they'll send mercenaries to try and collect it. I think that would be a pretty awesome gameplay mechanic, or maybe you'll even get arrested and you have to escape. I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that could be fun with that if they decided to include something about it. We also saw one additional trait in the gameplay deep dive, which was called Wanted. Wanted was described as giving you a damage buff when your health is low, but mercenaries will randomly show up and try and kill you. Some of the other traits we saw but did not see the descriptions for include Alien DNA, Empath, Taskmaster, and Unwanted Hero. Backgrounds and traits are a way for Bethesda to help make Starfield feel more real and immersive. Like any good Bethesda RPG, factions, quests, and the characters throughout the game will play an interesting role throughout the world. As we've discussed, your character will be a member of the Constellation Group, known as the last group of true space explorers. The two main factions in the game will be the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective, who, as mentioned, maintain an unsteady peace after the previous bloody colonial civil war. During a dev diary, we learned about another faction known as Ryujin Industries. They're more of a corporate-based entity who operates throughout the galaxy. Within the dev diary, they discuss that their questline begins by applying for a job within the company and then having to prove yourself to actually earn that job and position. And lead quest designer Will Shin has said that it's one of the most interesting starts to a quest line in the game. Bethesda has also shown us another really interesting faction known as the Crimson Fleet. They are a group you can refer to as the game's space pirates, who feel that the galaxy belongs to them, and they'll use whatever means necessary to take what they feel is theirs. During the first gameplay showcase, we saw our character do battle with them on the moon of Crete at the Crete Research Lab. However, the Crimson Fleet doesn't have to be your enemy in-game, as you'll actually have the option to join the Crimson Fleet if you so choose. However, it should be known that the group is very hardcore, and they require a lifelong commitment. If you decide to join the Crimson Fleet, you are a member for life, and we've even heard one of the NPCs say,
"You sign up with the Crimson Fleet, no one quits. The only way out is death."
Even if you want to join the Crimson Fleet but don't necessarily see yourself as a bad guy, you can also do some really cool undercover work, with Starfield's design director Emil Pagliarulo stating, quote, "The cool thing about the Crimson Fleet, what if you're a good person and you want to be a good player, and you don't want to play as a bad guy? You can side with the pirates, or you can report back to your superiors, and be this space cop type of thing. So it lets you be a good person and still play with the bad guys." We also know that the game will contain some religious groups such as the Enlightened and the Sanctum Universum, but also the other interesting group that worship the Great Serpent. While you can have a religious trait that will affect your gameplay experience, it's unclear whether or not these religions will present you with different quest opportunities. And there are also a few other groups in Starfield that you will encounter that have just been mentioned briefly. One of those are the Ecliptic Mercenaries, which, as their name suggests, is a mercenary group throughout the galaxy. Another are the Spacers, described as a violent group, as well as a group that we haven't seen yet known as House Baroon, which have been described as a group of religious zealots. In an interview, lead quest designer Will Shin discussed how faction quests will work in Starfield. He discussed that the main quest will give you a tour of the settled systems to help you understand the major factions of the game. Faction questlines can be completed independently of each other, so doing one faction questline won't lock you out of doing others. However, you will be able to influence the direction a faction may go and the decisions that they make. with Will giving the example of the Freestar Rangers, with you helping them decide, quote, what's more important? Is it justice or industry? Where are you going to try to nudge them in this direction or the other? With him then expanding to discuss factions as a whole, saying, quote, so you don't necessarily end up as the head of every single faction of the game, but obviously all the major characters and every faction questline will be reflecting on your choices. It can have far-reaching consequences for what the faction is and what it cares about. Todd Howard has said that Starfield will include a massive amount of handcrafted quests and dialogue to engage with Howard stating, quote, we have done more handcrafting in Starfield, like content-wise, than any game we've done. Starfield will contain over 250,000 lines of dialogue. For perspective, Fallout 4 contained around 110,000 lines of dialogue, while Skyrim had around 60,000. In Starfield, similar to previous Bethesda games, your character will be a silent protagonist, as you will choose dialogue options throughout the game, and NPC characters will react and respond to those choices. One interesting aspect of dialogue is that Starfield will include speech or persuasion challenges. These challenges will follow the natural flow of dialogue, but they can have a real impact on gameplay and your NPC interactions. With Todd Howard saying, quote, it feels like it's part of the dialogue, but you're spending points to persuade them. Feels natural. I'm not doing regular dialogue. I'm in this mode of persuading you to get what I want. Will Shin described that the team wanted to create dialogue choices that weren't necessarily right or wrong. With Will stating, quote, you have to think about, what's my risk here? Which one do I want to choose? We didn't want it to be a system where there was definitely the right thing to say. And with Howard adding, quote, it feels like you're having a conversation where you're actually trying to persuade somebody of something. As far as new systems in dialogue, I think it's definitely one of the most successful ones that we've had. According to what we've seen so far, it appears to be a system where you have a certain amount of turns where you can try and convince somebody of something, and it may change based on your skill level. You can use points on safer and more risky options just depending on what you want to choose and how aggressive that you want to be. And there are other typical interactions if you don't want to do the persuasion system, such as just attack the person or leave the conversation entirely. However, the NPC dialogue options and this persuasion system just seem like another way to really engage us into the gameplay and really just immerse us in the world of Starfield, which I think is awesome. Starfield will also feature various NPC companions to join you in your journey throughout the galaxy. There will be a mix of human and robot companions to join you on your adventure, and Bethesda is taking steps to make them more realistic and believable as allies, by giving them actions and voice lines that reflect your situation more accurately. Companions will be most important during the main quest line, where they will have many opinions and thoughts about the decisions that you're making. Lead quest designer Will Shin said that in some instances, companions may be able to speak on your behalf to other NPC characters. He used the example that maybe you need to gain access or entry to a location, and you could have a companion speak for you, which could have either positive or negative outcomes. Some other things that companions will do is follow you into danger, you can trade equipment with them, and they can crew your ship. Companions also have their own skills, so choosing which companions to join you both on the ground and on your ship will depend on your playstyle and what skills you value in your companions. Throughout different developer interviews, we also know that NPCs will react differently depending on how you complete a quest. Major characters will react to your decisions throughout quest lines, and your decisions on the main quest line will determine who is with you at the end. With lead artist Esteban Paley stating, quote, that's probably my favorite part, like when you're exploring and your companion makes some comment off the cuff about something that you're checking out or something that just happened. That feels so perfect for immersion. It's just so believable you think it's a real person. With Will Shin adding, quote, there you'll be determining the fates sometimes, whether someone lives or dies, or whether someone's still in the faction or decides to leave the faction. There's a lot of different things that'll happen. So far we have seen a robot companion named Vasco. Vasco is Constellation's expeditionary robot, and according to Esteban Paley, Vasco is a, quote, utilitarian heavy industrial machine well suited to the rigors of space travel. Vasco will have a variety of benefits as a companion. He is mainly peaceful but does have some defensive capabilities if he needs to use them. He can load up on items to travel long distances while hauling cargo, even across rough terrain. Another awesome thing about Vasco that we learned in the deep dive is that he can even say your name.
Welcome back, Captain Howard.
In the gameplay deep dive, we were also able to meet a variety of new Constellation members that will join us during our journey and play a key part in the main story. These members will also be available to help crew our ship. Some of those members were Constellation leader Sarah Morgan, Mateo the theologian, Noel the scientist, and Walter the businessman who actually funds Constellation. There's also Vlad the ex-pirate, Sam Coe the former space cowboy, and possibly Freestar Ranger, and Barrett. As I mentioned, Constellation members will join you on your ship and various various missions, and you can use their various skill sets to your advantage. Over time, your companions can eventually blossom into friendships, and if you're really keen, even romantic relationships. From what we've learned, the romance moments will follow a similar theme to the Fallout games, where there won't be an explicit romance scene obviously, but there will include a short post-romance cutscene with dialogue, and they'll usually end in something humorous like a one-liner between the characters. Companions can be assigned various roles in the companion menu, where you can assign them to your ship and different outposts, which we'll talk about a little bit later. NPC characters are a crucial focus for Bethesda to get right in Starfield. Bethesda scanned numerous faces from a wide range of age groups and ethnicities, and mixed and matched all that data to help create highly detailed and diverse NPC characters, with lead artist Esteban Pelli discussing how they've really stepped up their efforts to increase the realism of these characters, stating, quote, "We've always allowed the player to create really interesting, unique characters. This game we've definitely severely leveled up. The tech is based on scanning of real-world models, similar to the photogrammetry we do in our landscapes. We're kind of applying the same thing to our people as well, because it's not just the appearance of your player and all that, but we want all the personal interactions with NPCs, other characters in the game to be as impactful as possible. And for that, you have to believe these are real people, you're a real person, and you're interacting with real people." While Bethesda did their research and homework when it comes to NPC realism, you'll have the opportunity to do your own research as well with research, crafting, and Outpost development. By using the research lab, you'll be able to conduct research projects in the areas of pharmacology, food and drink, outpost development, equipment, and weaponry. By mining and collecting valuable resources throughout the galaxy, you will be able to conduct these research projects to craft things from weapons to different spacesuit equipment, and even items to develop your own outpost. And like I mentioned, these materials will be able to be mined using your cutter tool, which we saw in that first gameplay reveal, but I'm sure you'll also be able to purchase them at different places throughout the galaxy as well. Pharmacology and food and drink will require you to find and collect different plants or fauna, as well as different planetary wildlife or flora to create things like food and medicine. Bethesda has even worked to make the food in Starfield feel very real and detailed. From alien jerky to orange juice to sandwiches. Oh, so many sandwiches. Equipment will likely require many raw materials that you have to mine. So far within the weaponry category, we've seen different research projects ranging from barrel, grip, and muzzle mods to optics and larger magazines, as well as suppressors, which I'll definitely need with my stealth build. With these research projects requiring different materials such as iron, nickel, and sealant. Probably the most interesting and exciting research and crafting component is Outpost development, which will allow you to build your very own bases on the planets and moons that you discover throughout the settled systems. And you can build your outpost almost anywhere on any planet. According to Todd Howard, Outposts will serve as your, quote, home away from home for survival and resource generation. Outposts can be custom built and designed to your liking. They can have various structural components such as airlocks, walls and hallways, hydroponics, science and military hubs, watchtowers, and more. When designing your outpost, you can use a top-down isometric camera, allowing you to see the overall layout as you build. You can also do other things while on the ground as well, such as decorating and placing items inside your outpost to truly make it feel like a home. Your outpost will run differently based on the skills your selected crew members have. Your crew can then run extractors to help collect resources while you're even away. It sounds like Bethesda is truly trying to make outposts a really fun and engaging element in Starfield. As Todd Howard has said, quote, "You want to go and land on that weird planet and check it out, and build an outpost and live your life there and watch the sunset because you like the view of the moons there? Go for it. We love that stuff." Regarding the game's user interface or UI, we have seen some of the basics like a health bar and weapon inventory, as well as a map/compass containing status items like your oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, the area's temperature, and the planet's gravity. And from the UI options we've seen, we also know that the game will feature a photo mode where you can pause gameplay to take some sweet in-game shots. Starfield will allow you to play in both first and third-person viewpoints, just like previous Bethesda titles. Additionally, Todd Howard has gone on record stating that the first-person viewpoint is really their intended way for players to experience Starfield, but I always appreciate them including both options. Starfield also has a new animation system for gameplay to help make movement and combat feel more smooth. You also have a scanner that you will use while walking around various planets and moons to help identify the flora, fauna, resources, and structures of that location. There's also a surface map that will seemingly allow you to get an overview of the nearby landscape. The data menu will give you an overview of all the current things about your character. You can view things such as your current level, your health, and the in-game time. You can also check in on other information such as your ship status, as well as the planet and system that you're on. You can also view your skills and their current ranks, as well as unlock new skills, check your inventory, and check in on your current quests. As you progress through the game, the skills that you choose to unlock for your character will affect your gameplay style. These skill trees will include combat, physical, social, science, and tech skills. Each skill also appears to have 4 ranks that can be leveled as you complete different challenges to increase their gameplay benefit. For example, within the combat skills that we saw, these challenges could be something such as reloading a specific number of empty mags or killing a certain number of enemies with a heavy weapon. Each skill begins at level 0, but their benefit increases as you go from level 0 to 1, 2, 3, and then finally level 4. We have seen various skills across both the first gameplay reveal and the new gameplay deep dive. For each category, I'll discuss the skills that we actually have some details on, then I'll mention the ones that we've just seen the name of, and possibly give my guess as to what they may mean. Let's start with the combat skills category. We have seen sniper certification, which helps to steady scoped weapons, rapid reloading, which gives you the chance to reload twice as fast, heavy weapon certification, which increases your damage resistance when using heavy weapons, demolitions, which increases explosive weapon range and damage. We also have ballistics, which increases ballistic weapon damage and range, dueling, which increases melee weapon damage, pistol certification, increasing pistol damage, marksmanship, which I would guess gives you more accuracy. There's also targeting, which increases hipfire range and accuracy. There's also shotgun certification, lasers, and rifle certification. Maxing out or ranking skills to the highest level will provide a large gameplay boost that will allow you to specialize your playstyle. For example, with the ballistic skill, by reaching the max rank of 4, you will increase ballistic weapon range and damage by 30%. Within the physical category, we've seen Neuro Strikes, which gives you an incredibly strong punching ability. We've also seen Decontamination, which allows you to better recover from infections naturally, as well as Stealth, which increases your ability to stay undetected, Wellness, which increases your max health, Martial Arts, which I would guess would be another melee hand-to-hand combat skill, and Weightlifting, which increases your carrying capacity. So similar to Skyrim, you won't be able to carry 20 swords, or in this case weapons, without being weighed down and over-encumbered, as you're going to have a max carrying capacity number. Within the social skills category, we've seen Intimidation, which allows you to strike fear into your opponent, causing them to flee. We've also seen Leadership, which allows companions to gain affinity faster for you, which is the amount that they like you. Xenosociology, which allows you to mind control alien creatures. You can cause them to pacify, to flee, frenzy, or control them for a short time, and it looks like there's a percentage chance of your success based on your level. There's also Gastronomy, which is the ability to craft specialty food and drink at research labs. Persuasion, which increases your success on speech challenges, which could be a really strong one because that is a big part of Starfield, is those persuasion and speech challenges. Diplomacy, which forces an NPC at or below your level to stop fighting for a while. Commerce, which allows you to be better able to open and run a successful business. So does that mean in Starfield we're going to get to own and operate our own business? I'm not totally sure. Maybe it only relates to Outpost. Is that what they mean? Not 100% sure, but it sounds really interesting. There's Bargaining, which allows you to buy items for cheaper and sell them for more. Scavenging, which is likely to give you better items or more credits from looting and chests. As well as Theft, which allows you to better be able to pickpocket someone, and is definitely one that I'm going to choose because in Skyrim I was a Khajiit who snuck around just stealing everything from everyone's house and their pockets. And then there was Instigation, which I'm not totally sure what that one may be. It could be that you can anger NPCs and allow them to fight each other. Within the science skill, we saw Astrophysics, which means you can scan the moons of your current planet, increasing the chance of discovering a trait when scanning as well. There was also Chemistry, allowing you to create improved chems and research additional chems at the research lab. Medicine, which gives you increased healing from med packs. Astrodynamics, which increases your ship's grav drive ability, which is the ability to jump from one system to another. And then Surveying, increased ability to survey an area when on land. There was also Outpost Engineering, Botany, and Geology. Within the tech skill tree, we saw Security, which allows you to better be able to hack locks and hack advanced locks. Now this relates to the lockpicking minigame in Starfield, in which you'll use what is known as a digipick, allowing you to try and unlock different levels of security. During the minigame, you'll need to correctly line up digital lines on a circle with the missing gaps in another circle. And as you rank up your security skill, you'll be able to hack more difficult locks as well as have more auto attempts so you don't have to try and solve them all on your own. There's also the robotics skill, which gives you increased damage to robotics and autonomous turrets. There's also payloads, which likely increases your cargo space on your ship for carrying more. There's boost pack training, which increases your boost pack or jetpack abilities to probably allow them to last longer. missile weapon systems, which likely increases the damage or effectiveness of the missiles on your ship, and particle beam weapon systems, which likely does the same for those, targeting control systems, which allows you to target specific system components on enemy ships. We also saw it just briefly, but in the deep dive we saw the starship design skill, which appears to be a required skill to add certain components to your ship. For example, to add a certain laser to the ship, the footage showed that starship design rank 1 was required to do that, and for a certain engine, rank 2 of that skill was needed. There's also piloting and starship engineering. Combat will be a huge part of Starfield. With a variety of weaponry available to use, Starfield's combat looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. However, you won't be just limited to fighting on the ground, as we also know that spaceship combat or dogfighting will also be present in Starfield. So let's discuss both, starting with the ground combat. We've seen a variety of different alien creatures that we will face off against while exploring different planets. Some of these creatures will likely be docile until provoked, however we've seen numerous aggressive creatures that we'll have to contend with throughout the galaxy. We've also gotten some information about the gear and equipment in Starfield. Some equipment such as helmets can be toggled on or off in breathable atmosphere, and other gear such as your spacesuit can actually be hidden while in large city areas. Gear can have resistances or weaknesses to different types of weapon damage as well as environmental damage. Those environmental resistances or weaknesses include thermal, corrosive, radiation, and airborne. The jetpack, or boost pack as it's called, will play an important role in combat, providing you with mobility and flexibility in your combat approach. One thing that Todd confirmed that I know will definitely be a disappointment to some is that there are no rovers or other land vehicles in Starfield. And he said that the jetpack or the boost pack will allow you to get around quickly and can be upgraded through your skills like we've seen. There will be a variety of weapons to add to your arsenal in Starfield. When swapping weapons, gameplay will slow for a short time as you choose between weapon slots on a weapon wheel. It appears that you'll be able to slot in pistols, rifles, heavy weapons, shotguns, snipers, and melee weapons into your inventory, as well as explosives such as grenades and landmines. I won't go over each and every weapon that we've seen because after the gameplay deep dive we have seen a lot. Weapons in Starfield fall into a few different categories depending on their ammunition type. Those being ballistic weapons, which do physical damage, energy weapons, which are your laser weapons and your cutter tool, and mag or EM weapons, which are electromagnetic weapons that fire high-powered electromagnetic induction ballistic arrays. Man, that is a mouthful.
That's what she said.
Each EM weapon barrel will have a targeting laser mounted on the end, which I think is just really cool touch. Starfield will also include a variety of just fun and crazy weapons to use, such as rocket and grenade launchers to railguns. Bethesda have said that when designing the weapons for Starfield, they wanted to balance realism and fun, with Starfield leaning towards what will be the most fun for the player. As we saw in the research and crafting section, weapons can be customized in great detail, and we've seen weapons that can hold anywhere from 6 to 8 different modifications, which will allow for a variety of different playstyles. From a run and gun approach to a more stealthy build, the options are there for you. There are also a variety of melee weapons we have seen, from knives to axes to katanas, or even your bare fists. Bethesda have said that Starfield has more weapons and weapon modifications than any game they've created thus far. We've also seen some fun animations while in combat, like when our character shoots an enemy jetpack, causing them to launch into the air. And we've seen some examples of low grav fighting, meaning that the planet or moon you're on and its attributes will affect your approach to combat. And in the gameplay deep dive, you may also want to alter your weapon of choice, depending on the attributes of a planet. For example, in low gravity settings, ballistic weapons will push you back as you fire, while energy weapons are much more stable. Our character can use their jetpack in combat to add some verticality to the fighting, which I assume will also have some usefulness for getting to different locations throughout the game. Regarding some of the other combat or gameplay mechanics, we've also seen that stealth will be a viable option in Starfield, which I'm really happy to see. There will be a stealth meter to show whether we are hidden or being seen. We have also seen that we'll be able to pickpocket and loot NPCs as well, which is one of my favorite things. I think in Skyrim I played as a Khajiit who just went around looting and pickpocketing and stealing everything from everyone. You can also use the environment to your advantage. One example was in the deep dive when the player shot a tank, freezing the enemy instantly. Another example was when the player went through an air vent to try and sneak attack an enemy. So far I haven't seen any takedown animations. I think that would be a really cool touch, but since we haven't seen it yet, I'm going to assume that takedown animations are not there. There was also a tease at some potential other abilities our character may acquire at some point. What this clip shows and what those abilities may be, I guess we'll just have to wait and find out. Some have speculated that this may be some form of psionics that our character may acquire through those ancient artifacts that we find. It'll be interesting to see what role they play in both combat and Starfield's story as a whole. And when it's time to jump back in your ship, you'll be able to walk back, hop in, or fast travel back to your ship and crew to take off into the skies. While it won't be the majority, at least some of the game's combat will take place on your ship, as we have seen footage of dogfighting between your ship and other enemy ships. While flying and fighting in your ship, you'll be able to switch between first and third person perspectives just like on the ground. Todd Howard himself has said that ship combat will be quite slower than ground combat, and from the footage it appears to be more measured and methodical. While fighting, you will have weapons that you can fire while manually aiming your ship, as well as weapons that use auto-lock to lock onto enemies. Certain skills will make space combat more effective. For example, the targeting control system skill will allow you to target specific system components on enemy ships to get an advantage while fighting. So say you want to work down their shield, then destroy their grav drive so they can't jump away, then this skill will allow you to do that. You'll be able to focus in on those components and then take down their ship piece by piece. After destroying an enemy ship, you'll be able to loot that ship without ever having to leave your own. Your ship's power systems will also play a big role in combat, as Starfield has looked to the game faster than light, also known as FTL, for inspiration. During the first gameplay reveal, we saw some of these components when our character was in the first person perspective. We saw those 3 weapon systems of lasers, ballistics, and missiles, as well as the engine, shields, and grav systems. I imagine as you level up your ship and its components that you'll be able to allocate increasing amounts to these systems. If you increase power to your engines, your ship will be faster, while increasing your grav drive system will decrease the amount of time it takes to make a jump. So if you find yourself in trouble, you may want to try and jump away quickly. Moving power over to your weapons and shields allows you to engage in combat more effectively. In space, the combat doesn't lock you within your ship, as you'll have the opportunity to be the space pirate you've always wanted. You'll be able to disable and dock onto other ships to then board them. You can eliminate the enemies on board and then steal their ship if you really want to. These ships can then be stored in a spaceport to access or sell later. One thing I noticed during the gameplay deep dive was that ships can be either registered or unregistered, likely based on if you purchased them or stole them. This could have implications when hauling goods or trying to get into locations where you need to be scanned. It may also have some implications as well if you stole them from a certain faction and that faction sees you in space, flying around in that stolen ship. We have also seen that faction bounties will be present in Starfield, which could mean that if you do steal a ship from a faction, then you'll need to deal with that bounty or risk being attacked if seen. Todd said that even stolen, unregistered ships can be customized, but they have to first be registered. So if you acquire a ship in a less than legal way, then you're going to have to spend some credits to get your ship registered so you can then customize it. However, even if you stole it and you can't customize it just yet, you'll still be able to fly it around and store it and things like that. Todd has said that this is to try and keep the game's economy from being broken by, people just stealing ships and then going and selling them right away or customizing them right away. With both space and ground combat, there's just so much in Starfield to engage with, and I for one just cannot wait to experience it all. Since operating a spaceship will be a big part of Starfield, it's important that Bethesda provides an in-depth system for creating and customizing your own spaceship, and it looks like they've done just that. Bethesda has described your ship as your home for you and your crew, so let's discuss the options you'll have when it comes to spaceship customization and the crew that will help you operate it. You will have full customization over the look and components of your ship, to a very intricate detail, as Bethesda has described your ship as essentially another character in-game. In the deep dive, we learned that the game's starting ship is known as the Frontier. However, there are also a variety of other ships that we can purchase and then customize. To do so, you'll begin with your base ship that you purchase, and then you'll be able to customize and choose various components for it. From the deep dive, some of those examples we saw were the Celestial, Dragonfire, Slipstream, Voyager, and the Marathon. We also saw some stolen faction ships such as the Spacer Coyote, a Freestar Narcissus, an Ecliptic Claymore, and an Ecliptic Stiletto. The different ship manufacturers also have their own unique style, which will affect the inside of your ship as well, such as your living quarters, cargo holds, control rooms, and more. During the deep dive, we were able to get a look at all the components that you'll have to choose from when designing your ship. You'll be able to customize the cowling, the shield generator, docker, fuel tanks, grav drive, weapon systems, hab, engines, cockpit, cargo hold, reactor, bay, and landing gears. These components will affect the systems, strength, and capacity of your ship. This will include things such as your lasers, ballistics, and missile systems, your hull and shield strength, cargo, carrying capacity, number of crew members it can hold, jump range, mobility, top speed, and ship mass. And you can imagine that as you add or remove ship components, the way that your ship will operate will change. If you want a faster, more maneuverable ship, you need to reduce the mass. If you want to be able to carry more people and cargo, then you'll need a bigger, likely more sturdy ship, but you'll decrease your speed and mobility. However, ship components also determine what you can do inside the ship as well. There are various module options for crafting, for storing weapons, and more. There are two methods of ship customization. One method is a quick upgrade method where you'll quickly upgrade your systems such as weapons or shields. However, if you really want to get into building your ship and customizing it to your liking, you can go into the more detailed ship builder mode, where you can customize basically everything, from the different systems your ship has to its look and layout. And this is where the shipbuilding part of Starfield really gets fun and creative, and where I know we'll see some incredible builds. Just as we saw in the deep dive, if you want to build your ship to look like an animal, then go right ahead. If you want it to look like a giant mech, then go right ahead. The options are seriously wide open, and the possible sizes of ships you can create are absolutely massive. The inside of ships in Starfield will have what Bethesda described as a retro and analog feel. It's where you'll find your crew, navigation table, inventory storage, and any other things you may need. Your ship's crew will play an important part in Starfield. Depending on the size of your ship and its tab will affect how many crew members you can actually bring on board. Your crew skills will help to influence your gameplay style and what you can actually do on the ship. Their skills may increase your combat abilities, or they may actually help you to get more research and crafting materials that you can use. So based on how you want to play the game and based on the skills that you find valuable, it will be important to sort of look at your crew members and decide how you want to assign them and their roles. There are just so many possibilities when it comes to companions and your ship and your crew. It's just all very exciting. Starfield is being built on a new version of the engine that was used to create some of the classic Fallout games and Skyrim, the Creation Engine 2. Todd Howard described the engine update with this quote: "The Creation Engine overhaul is the largest we've probably ever had, maybe larger than Morrowind to Oblivion. There are things we do that we still like, the way we build our worlds, the way people can mod it. These are things that are fundamentally good about our tech stack. But from rendering to animation to pathing to procedural generation, I don't want to say everything, but it's a significant overhaul." Since Howard mentioned modding, let's discuss it. Bethesda have said that the modding community is a big part of what they do, and they would like that community to continue with Starfield. In an interview with IGN, Todd Howard said, quote, "We love our modding community. We actually think this game for our modding community is going to be a dream, because there's so much they could do, so we think that's a great thing." I can imagine all the fantastic mods that will come to this game and help the game be enjoyable for years to come. Here's to hoping that Bethesda stays good on that promise and that modding will be able to add a lot to the game and its longevity. And regarding that longevity, Todd Howard and art director Matt Carafano discussed the potential for Starfield's longevity, something that mods will definitely be a big part of, with Howard stating, quote, "I think we underestimate how long people are going to play it. You look at Skyrim, we're sitting here 10 years later and it keeps having this life, and it changes the way you want to create something." With Matt then adding, quote, "Yeah, I feel like our games sort of have two lives. We create this game and we put everything we can possibly put into it, and tell the stories we want to tell, and build this world that's sort of a setup that when we hand it off to the players, they play it, but then they take it and make it their own. They tell their own stories, and then they make their own stories with our tools." Starfield's PC requirements have also been released, which I'll put up on the screen now. The biggest standout for most will likely be the 125 gigabytes of required SSD space that's needed to run the game. I know many people have SSDs now, but there may still be some of you that are out there rocking traditional hard drives to store your massive game libraries, and if that's you, then Starfield may need to be the exception to that, or it may require you adding an additional drive to your PC. And the game will require a pretty decent PC to run with fidelity, but that was to be expected. One thing that has been met with some controversy was the game's console specs, where Todd Howard has said that Starfield will run at 30 FPS on consoles, with him stating, quote, "It's 4K on the X, it's 1440p on the S. We lock it at 30 because we want that fidelity. We don't want to sacrifice any of it." He mentioned that the game runs well and often above 60, but they prefer consistency on the console, so they will be locking it at 30 FPS, which I know will be disappointing to many console players. As mentioned, Starfield will release on September 6, 2023, and will have 3 versions of the game available for purchase: a standard, premium, and Constellation or Collector's Edition. The standard edition will come in at around $70 US and comes with the base game, as well as some pre-order bonuses if you choose to do so, those including a laser cutter and deep mining helmet and pack. The premium edition will come in at around $100 US and will include the base game, 5 days of early access, the game's first story expansion, Shattered Space, a Constellation skin pack, and a digital soundtrack and art book. The final edition, the Constellation Edition, comes in at around $300 US and includes all the previous items as well as a Chronomark watch and case, steelbook display case, and a Constellation patch. And as of mentioning this video, the Constellation Edition appears to be sold out. So it sounds like Starfield is going to be the next great installment from Bethesda. And I, for one, cannot wait to play it, to be able to dive into the settled systems and tell my own story, as well as have you all tell your own story as well. Be sure and let me know what you are most excited for when it comes to Starfield. Also, be sure and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video. It would be very appreciated. I put a lot of time into it and I hope that it was helpful and got you prepared for Starfield. Also, be sure and check out one of the 2 videos on your screen.